he is said to have been a dictator, and it was either his way or no way. I don't know if you saw him that way or you saw him a little differently.
Well, I did see him as a dictator because, you know, when you are a head of state or when you are in a powerful position, many people will see you in different ways. One, Moi welcomed everybody, including people in opposition. But you know, sometimes when you are a head of a state and you see things going wrong and you don't correct them, then they might just get worse. You know, I don't understand what people mean by saying that one is a dictator, because you see, Moi never forced issues. Moi allowed people to discuss issues. Moi allowed, you see, people started calling me dictator after the attempted coup in 1982. That's when they started calling him a dictator. And you know, the moment you are injured, you become very sensitive. You see, I remember very well when, you know, you find, when Kibaki came in, and we were in parliament, and some members of parliament, some people who are Kibaki supporters, were saying that Nyayo place, the Nyayo, remember that they used to call it the Nyayo chamber house. I mean the torture chamber. That it must be destroyed. And I asked some of them that suppose today we are sitting in parliament here and you hear that there are people maybe sitting somewhere in a certain house plotting to overturn this government. That time Kibaki was already in power.
Okay.
Would you sit and wait until they do it?
Okay.
Or you would arrest them immediately?
But that's just a positive one that you're giving to justify.
But you see,
yeah.
That's how things happen.
Yes.
You
but it sounds more as a justification to what happened rather than an explanation.
Yes,
for
but
why
you see
it
now,
happened.
when Moi was president, you know, dictator does not even allow people to talk. Does not even allow people to say anything. But Moi allowed people to discuss things.
What if what they're saying is what coheres with his thoughts? He allows them to. Let me listen to the for my agent.
I think it's for me.
Yes.
I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. We have to make a difference between the period of the attempted coup,
yes,
and up to 1990, when maybe things like removing the security of tenure of judges, removing secret ballot, those type of issues were coming. But that was a reaction of a man who was about to be removed from power.
From power, yes.
That period should be...
We cannot blame him for that period.
The period 1991 onwards, when he accepted multipartyism and were able to bring in multipartyism and parties were able to be formed, I do not think that you can call Moi a dictator. I personally, when I was appointed as Attorney General and I was given a house in Muthaiga, I refused because at that time the perception outside was he's a dictator. And I had already made a name for myself at the international level and at the regional level in matters of human rights. So I thought I could not last. So I opted to stay in my house because I thought I could not last, because Moi was a dictator. But the personal experience I now had thereafter, it was literally accepting whatever advice one gave him, he would follow it. And there are many examples I can give for that. Sorry. There are many examples I can give for that. For example, we had Ford, okay?
Yes.
And then because of the differences in leadership between Oginga and Matiba, it split.
Yes.
Now, the Hawks, if Moi had been a dictator, the Hawks were demanding, and there was a law for it, for the Attorney General to deregister Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And the law was there, and that law is still there today. That is the interest of peace, security, blah, 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 deregister.
Okay.
Alternatively, under Section 19, where one sees that there's a dispute in leadership, I had the power, if I wanted to, just to give notice, and at the expiry of that power,
yes,
deregister.
You would.
Now, if he had been a dictator,
yes, would that have happened?
He would have ordered me.
Yes.
He would have ordered me to deregister.
But he didn't.
He did not. Instead, we discussed the whole issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We discussed the whole issue.
Okay.
And I said, there is a law not of deregistering because of public security, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
But at least where it appears to the Attorney General or to the registrar that there's a dispute in the leadership. And at that time, there was indeed a dispute in the leadership.
Yes.
One did not know who the leader of Ford, as it then stood, was. So I said, we'd rather use that law. But instead of me giving a notice of 30 days for them to come together, and and the register, if they don't come together, I said the best thing is let us give them the opportunity, the opportunity to register, but with an acronym to show the difference.
Okay.
And that's how Ford Kenya and Ford Asili came.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, that is not an attitude of a dictator. That's an attitude of a Democrat who wants to see multi-party democracy work.
But perhaps you can also argue that he had no option at that point, and we were headed towards multi-party, and this had to happen.
No, this issue about no option, let's forget it.
Okay. There are always options.
If a person is a dictator,
yes,
you don't talk about option. If you say
signs of time,
it's done. In spite of the consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Signs of time.
If he had refused to, if he had said, I'm not retiring this year, I'm going on, he would have gone on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You
would have gone on. The problems would have been there, but he would have
shed blood, what he feared most at that time.
I know Chief Jonathan of Botswana. He refused to go after an election, after he lost an election, and he stayed in power for another 10, 11 years.
Okay.
You think Moi could not have done that if he wanted to at that time?
Okay.
So we are talking about somebody who, to me, who was not a dictator in the way you think it is. We are talking about somebody who was basically interested in the good welfare of Kenyans and Kenya as a state.
Okay. Okay.
Well, this is a very interesting conversation, but it must always be taken in the right context.
Yes.
Because all these things happen within a certain context. And we have to look at what the Attorney General says when it came to dealing with the coup and the aftermath of the coup.
Yes.
There were certain measures that would have to be taken at that time. Equally, we must also remember that globally, during Moi's time, a few things were happening that had implications all over. This is when the Cold War was coming to an end. The Russian side of it was crumbling, and so there were certain dynamics globally that would definitely influence the politics of many nations, not just Kenya, but many nations. Now, we then will remember that during that time, because make no mistake, Moi never compromised on security. All right, let's also call a spade a spade.
His security or the country's security?
Country's security.
Okay.
And if he felt that there was a security threat to the country, in one way or the other, whether originating internally or externally, Moi would be very firm. All right. Now, if the firmness then is interpreted as dictatorial, then that becomes something else. But he never compromised on matters security. Equally, we have had challenges. You know, we had a crackdown on people during Moi's era. But equally we saw, even after Moi's era, we saw in the Kibaki era, people would say there are extrajudicial killings and so forth. So that there are certain challenges that will emerge. And even now, those challenges still emerge.
Still exist.
Now, we are also seeing a new